Legislators will pass hundreds of bills this session, but this one may have the biggest impact moving forward. The state of Washington has never had an income tax, and this one would target the state's top earners. Washington voters have repeatedly voted down income tax proposals, but Democrats, who hold a majority in Olympia, say this is what the state needs. The tax would impact households making more than $1 million a year. Those residents would be subject to a 9.9% levy on their incomes above $1 million. The money generated would reduce taxes for small businesses and eliminate the sales tax on grooming and hygiene products. The state's working families tax credit for low-income residents would see a boost in funding.
To me, personally, it is common sense that
I love that line. To me personally, it's common sense. I don't know who this is. She appears to be some sort of elected official. Here's the irony. The people of Washington state have voted against this over and over and over again. So please, let's have a politician come in and tell us about common sense.
if you make more money than 98% of Washingtonians, you pay an income tax to help build a better Washington for all Washingtonians.
This is such a crazy line to me, and it's hard to argue against a point like this, right? You should pay to build a better life for all Washingtonians. But what they fail to mention is like how that actually works, right? So, interestingly, in Washington state, it's been a relatively high growth state. Think of the big companies that are based there, Microsoft as an example. So they want to throw this income tax out there on people making over $1 million so that they can then implement small business tax relief. I don't understand what they're trying to incentivize or disincentivize there. It seems like, well, let's take less money over here so that we can collect more money over there. It seems like they're just going to make this overly complex. But we like complexity because that gives us nuance and that gives us opportunity for advocacy.
If this bill passes today, future legislatures can easily come back and change the threshold from $1 million down to $500,000 to $250,000. They can apply it to anyone that they want to. All across our state, it could become a universal income tax with just a simple majority vote and without the people having the right to referendum.
So sure, this is a typical slippery slope argument. If we do this, how much worse can it get? And again, I'm not sure this is the most compelling argument, but it does kind of make sense that, hey, if we're going to impose a tax on people making over $1 million, why not 2 years from now we make it $500,000? And as states or the federal government continue to increase their spending, they've got to close this gap either by slowing that down or decreasing the spending, which they're often not likely to do, or by raising more revenue. So you can see the slippery slope argument kind of working here.
The tax on millionaires would generate about $3 billion for the state when they start collecting, potentially as soon as 2029. The bill now heads to the House. In Olympia, Drew Mickelson.
So that's where we can do something about this, right? I haven't read the proposal, and this is only past the Senate. It still needs to get through the House in Washington. But this is the fun thing about income, particularly with small business owners, is there are often strategies that we can show a lower income. Perfectly legal, perfectly lawful, and ethical strategies. But just because you have a number over $1 million doesn't mean that you made exactly that much money. So this is where some of the strategy comes in. Unfortunately, what I see is a whole bunch of people that work at, say, Microsoft or other tech companies who may get W-2 income of over $1 million, and that's going to create a real problem for them because they have fewer planning opportunities than business owners. But let's make a really fun example out of this. You could pay someone $999,000 a year as a W-2 income, and they don't pay any of this tax. But the moment you pay them an extra $1,000 and get them over that threshold, suddenly 10% of their income is now going to go to Washington for taxes. This seems like it's going to be a pretty tough argument. The other thing that I like about what this guy says is there's no opportunity for a referendum. And this is what I'm talking about, of taking it back to the people. The citizens of Washington have already voted against this thing. And now if it gets passed by the legislature, the citizens are going to lose a lot of control over this. There's also a pretty interesting tax policy argument here, because the way it works right now is Washington collects a lot of sales tax. And sales tax is actually a higher burden on lower income people, right? If you pay 6% sales tax or 8% sales tax on a $100 purchase, if you only make 20 grand a year, that's a big portion of your budget. Whereas if you make $1 million, sales tax doesn't have as big an effect on you. It's considered a regressive tax. So I think what's interesting is they want to raise the revenue through this millionaire's tax. And I love that the phrase millionaires has a negative connotation to it now. And they're going to then reduce sales tax on other things, like they mentioned hygiene. So I think it's an interesting policy argument about who should be paying the taxes. And I think there's probably a populist argument that sales taxes tend to be regressive. So let's have the higher income earners pay more of their fair share. But I think what they're about to do is create a whole lot of complexity, create a whole lot of frustrated people, and create a bunch of people that either leave the state or find ways to move some of their income out of the state.